I mean, what's life for a conservative legal scholar in an elite law school? Stanford has got to be number 2, number 3, something like that. Number 2, you've overtaken Harvard.
Yeah.
Bravo. But in any case...
Who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? I mean, number 2, number 3, and the graduates are going to go off to federal judge clerkships and to, junior associates at major corporate law firms and to the staffs of senators and chairs of congressional committees and et cetera. And I'm just wondering how it feels, forgive the kind of soft character of this question, but I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. And I mean, how do you show your faces? Your faces were plastered on posters. These are the bad guys who have invited this guy. What's that like?
Well, luckily the first years did escape that. It was the board of FedSoc. I don't think they've had a great time about it, but I won't speak to their experience. I mean, I'm one of the softer members of FedSoc, so to speak. I agree with some of the substance of the protest. I don't agree that Obergefell undermined our democracy or something. I think that's an overstatement, right? But I'm still conservative. I'm still branded as FedSoc, and luckily for me, and especially to speak to this as well, because we have different perceptions in the community, I would say. But yeah, I have friends who are left of center and right of center, and most people are quite fine about it and even friendly. There are a few who the feds suck sign of the protest kind of emblemizes what they think and often how they act interpersonally, especially after the event, to my, honestly, considerable sadness. I sense after this that there has been a bit of an abyss, as Professor McConnell wrote in the Wall Street Journal, that's formed. People who I had previously spoken to, sort of barely acknowledge me. I don't know if it's because they're embarrassed, because the behavior of some of their fellows was a bit embarrassing, or because I showed up to listen. I can't say, but it's not always easy. And we, FedSoc, we are a bit ridiculed sometimes or looked at with some scorn, but overall it's not too bad. And it hadn't been anyway.
Spencer?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I do think it's important to understand that there's nuance to it, like David said, right? I mean, the reality in my experience has been that there are a lot of Stanford Law students and students at other law schools that I've interacted with who are extremely open-minded, which I think is a good thing for someone who's going to be an advocate. But there's a very vocal minority who is not open-minded. So I'm a Latter-day Saint, so I'm religious. I'm a religious conservative member of FedSoc, and people know that about me. I think this is true, of a lot of members of FedSoc around the country, but I know it's true for me. At the end of the day, I can go home to my wife and my dog and just enjoy my life, and I'm not as worried about what happens on campus, and what people think of me, they're going to think of me. But I'm going to keep trying to learn and pursue what I believe in. But I think that for a lot of students, especially those who live on campus at the law school, it can be a real struggle. And you see it, there's this real social pressure to conform.
Well, there's this passage, as you will remember well, David, and as I'm sure you know, Spencer, in John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, where he says, it's not the magistrate that we have to worry about, the gendarme coming around and locking us up for saying something. It's the prevailing opinion and the conformity, the pressures to conform socially. And so I'm just wondering, you guys are out of the closet FedSoc members, but there must be people who harbor more sympathy for your views than they're willing publicly to state. And I'm just, I'm wondering about that, because this is the opportunity, isn't it, when one is in law school to fully explore all the different dimensions of all the complex and nuanced issues that are confronting the country and the legal profession. So, I mean, can you respond to this concern that I have that this is a tip of an iceberg of tacit censorship and suppression of argument that undermines the intellectual integrity of the entire enterprise?
I think that's exactly right. So I have had throughout this quarter, and then even just the past several weeks, I've had several people come up to me after class in which maybe I made a remark, or after the protest and what happened. People have come up to me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I, really think that you made a great point there, or I really think you guys have the right to bring these speakers. I'm appalled by what happened, but I'm sorry for not standing up for you back there, but I don't really want to because I don't want to get crucified for this, so I'm going to stay out of it."
I think there's an extent, again, to which FedSoc is kind of ridiculed and, seen as like, ooh, the FedSoc people, And I've heard it, but I think there's curiosity that might be tamped down by it. I know there are people who are like certainly interested in our ideas, but who shy away from any association. And I think when you assume so much that your view is correct, it comes across, and then discussion with someone who's more open to discussion, that person will probably react and not go there, and maybe not even think it's okay to think it. That's my experience with self-censorship, and I think it plays out at the law school too.
What's next for FedSoc Stanford? What have you got on tap? How has your experience here affected your thinking about the role of the organization at Stanford Law going forward? If you want to share it without tipping your hand to your adversaries, what's your next move?
Well, I think I can just say with absolute confidence that we're going to keep doing what we do, which is we're going to invite the best speakers that we can find. And historically speaking, I think that this is going to remain true despite the best efforts of protesters on campus. Actually, I think that the protests might have been counterproductive in this way. Some of the top talent and top most significant voices in the conservative legal movement are now signing up and waiting to come to Stanford because they want to come speak to us, and that's what we're going to do, right? We're David alluded to this earlier, but we're not monolithic. We have a diversity of views within our Federalist Society chapter, and we're going to bring people that interest each and every member of the chapter to come and explore those ideas, and we're not going to be intimidated or bullied into conforming with the status quo. No, we're going to challenge ourselves to understand what different perspectives are out there, even when we don't even agree with them. Just because I think this episode has made clear that FedSoc's really important to the law school, to a law school who has only one conservative public law professor. I think it's really valuable to have a different perspective on campus. And that's something that I hope, is not left to us alone. I hope that the law school also, in the name of diversity and inclusion, starts to try to bring in other perspectives at the faculty level as well.
I think we play an important role in the marketplace of ideas at Stanford. It's something that we were concerned about at Brown, I know, and the Federalist Society plays an important role, not just in that regard, but look, it's a coalition of libertarians and conservatives who have sort of a range of judicial philosophies within that mostly adhere to sort of history, text, and tradition. But there is some flexibility. I mean, it is not a monolith. And we've brought in great speakers, incredibly intelligent judges, who, like Judge Duncan, like Judge Newsom last year, and we will continue to do that. And we will continue to, contribute to the intellectual, wealth of our community. And I hope everybody who wants to attend does so and asks good questions.
Could Justice Thomas come to Stanford Law and speak without incident?
I hope he does. Please come, Justice Thomas.
Please do come, Justice Thomas.
I don't have an inside track, but it should be known in the world that you guys would welcome the presence of Justice Clarence Thomas at the Stanford Law School.
And
wholeheartedly.